Technology, it's great when it works. We're live. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Rates and Lanes podcast with Rico Muhammad and Chuck Snow. Just waiting for Rico to join us. He's busy doing something, but with no further ado, we have this week Marty Glom, the chairman of the ATHS, the American Truck Historical Society. We got the chairman tonight talking about the new upcoming 2025 convention that's going to be very soon, just over a week, over in Madison, Wisconsin. I'm pretty excited. Marty, I can't wait to see you guys in Madison. I can't believe it's been a year since we were in York.
I know. It does fly, doesn't it, Chuck? And
holy tamale. And that was one hell of an extravaganza, you guys. Well, this is going to be my fourth one. And,
cool.
You know, I've been a member for probably about 8 years, but when I was working, I never had the time to take off. I didn't have time to take a day off, never mind a couple days to go to a truck show.
Right.
And this is one of the reasons I retired, so I could do stuff like this. And I got to tell you, you guys haven't disappointed me yet.
Glad to hear that, Chuck. I mean, we've got an extremely dedicated staff that has been with us for a while. You know, I have to remind myself, it is a job for them, right? It's a passion for you and me. It's our love.
Yeah.
Job for them, but my gosh, they're so dedicated. They just work their butts off, and they do a fantastic job.
They really do. And, you know, you guys don't disappoint. Like, I go to truck shows up here in Canada, and I even went last year down to Macungie in Pennsylvania, which was a great show.
Sure.
But it's dwarfed by your shows. You know, like the one I went to, my first one blew me away. I was speechless. Matter of fact, it was so big. That was the one in Springfield, Illinois.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
It was so big that my cousin that was with me couldn't walk it on the second day. I had to rent him a scooter. And it's funny, you walk these shows and you think you see everything, and you don't. You walk back and you see stuff that you didn't see. It's the most bizarre thing, which I could never figure out. Like, where did that truck come from? How come I didn't see that one?
Or we'll get together in the evening, you know, relaxing a little bit, and I'll say, hey, dude, remember that truck? You saw that, didn't you? I said, like, no, I didn't.
What was that part? Well, it was next to that Greyhound bus.
Yeah,
I didn't exactly. Next to the Greyhound bus.
There was a cab over.
Exactly.
You know.
So, first of all, for those listeners out there that aren't familiar with your conventions, which are there's more trucks there than there is at Matt's at your conventions. There's a lot more. I remember the one. I don't know, how many did you have last year in New York? Any idea?
Oh, I think we were like 850-ish, something like that.
Okay, and I think the year before was a little bit bigger in over in Reno, Nevada.
Right.
And this one will probably be, you know, somewhere, I'm sure, between 800 and 1,000 trucks, would you say?
Yes, it's got every indication. I mean, there's more than 650 pre-registered. And we usually, historically, well, at least since COVID, about half of what's pre-registered register at the event. So we might be close to 1,000.
That's tremendous. Now, there's a whole bunch. Now, these aren't just, there's a lot of old trucks and there's the odd newer truck. But there's a lot of other stuff going on at these conventions, which is a lot different than most truck shows. You know, most truck shows you go to, they'll have the beer garden and things like that. But you've got lectures and stuff like that usually. Can you tell our listeners what we can look forward to this year at the show in Madison, Wisconsin?
Sure. Well, it'll start off with the kickoff party there Wednesday night.
I'll never miss a party. I'll be there.
Oh, no. And it officially opens Wednesday or Thursday morning.
Okay.
The 5th at 7:30. So little kickoff party Wednesday night. There's an ice cream social Thursday. We're going to have a light show on Thursday night. The awards banquet is Friday. There are tours that folks can go on. I think I can look here. There's 3 different tours that they can go on, and just speakers. We'll have several live demonstrations. We'll have several guest speakers. Just a variety of topics, from everything you might want to know about how to insure your truck, to how to properly set up an S-cam brake, or perhaps troubleshoot your Fuller twin countershaft transmission. So
Yeah.
there's quite a variety, shall we say.
Oh yeah, and it's a great place to meet people that are like-minded. It's just I've met some great friends through the years. Matter of fact, a couple of fellows I met in York. One of them had the same truck as I did. I brought that little Ford Cab over, and we became good buds. And another guy and I became almost like best friends. And what drew us together, first of all, we both have this love for trucks. That's why he was in York. And when we sat down and talked, we were having breakfast together, and it was the weirdest thing, Marty. We just kind of bonded like that. It was bizarre. It's the second time that's ever happened to me, where I just meet somebody and like, boom. And that guy and I were best of friends and hunting buddies for over 50 years until he passed away. And we just met at a hunting camp up in northwestern Ontario. We were hunting deer together when I was about 19 years old, and just clicked. And that's what happened with this fellow I met. And the weirdest thing, the more we compared stories, the more our stories were the same. The only difference was he sold his business 25 years before I did. He's a foot taller than I am. But he's real tall, because everybody knows how giant I am. And you know what? Other than that, and he is meticulous. Like, this guy will not drive his personal pickup if it's got a drop of dirt on it, where I'm not that fussy.
I wish I had time to be, but maybe that'll come one day. But no, Chuck, you're spot on. I mean, we have a little saying that we come for the trucks, we stay for the people.
So true.
I have, like you, I have made lifelong friends through the American Truck Historical Society, and there's just an amazing group of folks. Everybody's friendly. Sit down, strike up a conversation. Never met them before in your life, and you'll walk away friends. So,
well, you know what? They're all friends you haven't met yet.
There you go. Exactly right.
That's the best way to. And I have to share this with everybody. And this happened to me in Reno. Before I left for Reno, my wife said to me, she was razzing me, and she said, "You're going down to buy a truck, aren't you?" And I said, "No, I'm really not. I swear to you, I'm not going to Reno, Nevada to buy a truck, because it's a hell of a way to ship it. Because I never, any truck I buy, I never drive them back, just because you don't know the truck, you don't know its history." And I walked around the first day in Reno, and if you remember how hot that was, it was over 100 degrees out there.
Pretty warm, yeah.
It was a little warm. And I came in to buy something or look at something into the building, or I think I had just finished volunteering. I had a shift at one of the booths. I was doing some volunteer work, and then I walked around, and I looked at the bulletin board earlier in the morning. I came back to the bulletin board, and my dream truck was sitting for sale on the bulletin board.
Wow!
And it was a B model Mack with a sleeper.
Uh-huh.
I called the number, because I have my cell with me, of course. Right. I called the number, and fellow answered, and he said, "Where are you?" I said, "I'm at the bulletin board." He said, "I'm 30 feet away." And that's a gentleman named Bill Alexander. Sure. And Bill came over to me, and he said, "You like my truck?" I said, "I want to buy it." He said, "Well, here, let me show you some real pictures of it." And he showed me his phone, and he had all these photographs, and I said, sold. He said,
Right.
what do you mean? And I said, it's sold. I said, I'll be down next week to see it. And anyways, drove down. It was in Ohio. I drove down the following week. And when I saw the truck, I actually kissed it. It was so beautiful.
Really? Wow.
and,
Pretty good deal.
you know, well, we get a little emotional, some of us, when it comes to
Oh, don't we though? Yes.
if we
Yeah,
weren't, we wouldn't be doing this.
you're right, Chuck. You're right. That's so true. And those trucks, man, they develop a personality, you
They
know.
do, you know,
Right.
they really do.
People don't believe it, but I honestly do. I think it's so true, you know. I mentioned our staff that worked so hard to put this thing together, and I'd be remiss without the hundreds of people, literally, that volunteer members to pull this thing off. We have a convention committee chaired by a young man by the name of Peter Wild. Does a fantastic job with it. Between those volunteers on that committee, the volunteers on site, like yourself that day, Chuck, um, you know, it makes it a really, really good time. And without them, it surely wouldn't be possible. Um, and and it never stops. You know, they'll take a week off. A week after convention, they'll start working on 2027.
Isn't
Uh,
that wonderful?
and so they're they're fantastic people.
Well, I have to say, you know, when I was down in Kansas City last year for a volunteer thing I do for Next Gen Trucking,
Mhm.
there was a convention down there. It was a teacher, actually a guidance teachers conference, and I volunteer for them every year for 3 or 4 days at these conferences, and it's just to introduce guidance counselors to the possibility of their students entering into the trucking industry in some capacity. Now, some of them will never want to be drivers. Some will
Right.
want to be technicians or salespeople or billing clerks, all sorts of positions that are available. And so I was down there, and I couldn't be in Kansas City without coming to visit my favorite organization. So
Right.
called up and made sure I could go get in, because you never know, you know. And they said, "Sure, come on in." And I got to meet John, and we actually had dinner together the next night, and we became very friendly. And the lady that runs that place, and what really, first of all, the place blew me away with what you had in information available to the members. That is just like mind-boggling. If anybody wants to tackle a project, this is the place to go. You know, you guys are really the keepers of the information for going back, you know, in some cases almost 100 years.
Yes, absolutely. And you know that is the mission of ATHS, to preserve trucks, the trucking industry, and the pioneers that all got it started. And yeah, that library is just it's overwhelming.
It
Um,
really is.
Hundreds of thousands of pieces of literature, hundreds of thousands of photographs. Um, as you said, spanning well over 100 years, and the fact that we're going to be able to begin to digitize that and make it more available is just, I mean, it's just a fantastic thing, Chuck. We're so excited about that, and through the kindness of some people and some corporate entities, that's going to become a real deal.
Now that is great. You
It
know,
is.
I want to go back there, and just what I'd love to do is be able to spend a couple days there just going through stuff and
Yeah,
looking at those pictures, you know.
yeah.
To me, that's like I'm in my paradise, you know, when I do. So, you know, if somebody wants to bring their truck to this show, what's the protocol?
um, Show up. Be ready. Probably going to be a little bit of a line if you're not pre-registered, but we'll get all the information. We'll print up a window placard for you. Get you registered in the show and any of the other things that y'all want to do there. and then we'll get you parked and you'll be set for the weekend.
And Marty, what does it cost to go in and register your truck? Any idea?
Yes. Let me look to make sure that I'm not misquoting it here. Don't want to lead anybody astray. So, attendees are $75 for members and $100 for non-members for the person. The truck is $50 if you are a member and $65 if you are not.
Okay, so it's like 150. If it's
Buck and a half.
160, sort
Yeah.
of, that's pretty
Yeah.
reasonable. And
Yeah.
you're there for a few days, and you get to meet lots of people, show your truck, and find out where you can get parts for
No kidding.
it.
You know, the networking that goes on there
Oh my God, yeah.
is phenomenal. It's been a huge help to me with my projects. I sincerely hope that I've helped some other people with their projects. I mean, perfect example. Our regional vice president from Australia, Ian, he had a little accident with his truck. He's got a butterfly hood Kenworth.
Right.
And he called me and he said, Marty, he said, I just can't find a headlight stanchion anywhere. And I said, well, I got a couple of them. I'll send you one, and that happens every day. I'm sure that it happens every day, Chuck. And
Yeah, because you know what, these truck parts, so many of those old trucks back in the day, where when they finished their life,
yeah,
they went to the wrecking yard,
it did.
and it's not that long ago. It's like 15 years ago. I knew a guy here in Ontario who was crushing B model Max. Yeah, can you imagine? Like what
Yeah.
those things were worth? Like a door for one is $2,000.
Right.
They ain't making them anymore.
Nope. No, they aren't, are they? No, it's the folks that you meet, and I mean, if you're looking for something, put it on the bulletin board there in the main hall. Stick a little card on your
Yep.
window or something like that. Or if you want to be one of them sandwich guys and wear a sandwich thing says looking for Kenworth cab over door,
Yes,
that's
you know what?
okay too.
Whatever works.
Yeah.
Maybe at the show you want to have something like more of a parts exchange. Have you thought of that?
Yeah, we've had a swap meet on a couple different occasions.
Right.
Seem to have a lot of interest this year, but next year in Ohio, we are definitely going.
Next year in Ohio? Oh, that's great.
Cleveland next year. Yeah.
5-hour drive for me, buddy. I'll be there.
Right on. Very
So the
good.
following year is in Oregon. Is that what it is?
Yes. Then the next year will be Salem, Oregon.
Okay. I hope we're not letting the cat out of the bag here.
No, not at all. Not at all. Yeah, we're really looking forward to Ohio and to Oregon again. It's been, my gosh, it's probably 10 flies. 10, 12 years since we've been to Salem.
Right.
I mean, for us, it's a long haul.
It's a long haul for you know what? I understand. My thing is, my guess is that you move this around so that all your members get a chance to have it near their home and their business.
We do. We try and rotate, and we're working on having 3 permanent positions so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel every year. But there's definitely one in the West, one in Middle America, one in the East, and then the 4th year is usually a wild card somewhere that someone has a real interest in, and a convention bureau that's willing to help us out, visitors bureau that's willing to help us out, and things like that. It's hard to find a venue where you can park 1,000 trucks.
Okay? I was wondering, that was my next question. How the hell do you guys find venues where you can park 1,000 trucks? It's hard.
It takes a lot of work, and then to make sure that there's infrastructure there to support it, that the hotels are close, there's places to eat.
And an airport, people need that.
Right.
Not everybody drives their truck.
You're
You know,
right.
somebody coming from Salem, Oregon to Cleveland, Ohio with an old truck may not be driving it. They may just, they may just leave their old truck in Salem, Oregon and fly to Ohio.
For sure.
But if it's a place like Louisville that has an airport that doesn't serve anywhere, it's a problem.
It is. You know, yeah, it's really kind of hit or miss. We definitely look at that and try and add that into the equation, you know, of places that we think we might like to have a convention. Um, but it is difficult to find one place with all those pieces
Oh yeah,
that we can afford is the other part, you know.
well, yeah, that's the sometimes these places get just too expensive, and you can't. The end of the day, you've got to be able to cover the costs.
Right, right, and that's all we want to do. You know, I mean, nothing would make us happier than to have it free. I wish we could do it, but it's nearly a $500,000 proposition by the time everything is said and done. You know,
Oh,
and
I can see that. You know what the cost of things? You've got to have security, and you've got to have
oh,
insurance, cost of the venue, everything else. You know,
yeah,
it's very expensive.
yeah, and
And
if it breaks even, we are absolutely tickled to death. That's a very successful convention. You know.
yeah, I could see that. And you certainly get the crowds for it.
Oh
People,
yeah.
uh, I've run into people, and when I was working the door, I was doing some security work, I guess in Reno, and and I had a lot of people coming in, and they were saying, "Geez, we didn't know there was anything like this here. These were locals. This is fantastic. I'm coming back tomorrow with my kids. This is
Right.
unreal." You know, and those are the ones we want to get. We want to get those little buggers because once we have those, we got them hooked.
You got it. I was hooked at about the age of 5, I think, or thereabouts,
I
probably.
was a little younger. I was at 3 years old. I knew what I wanted to do, and you know,
Oh,
a fast, funny story. Uh, I hated school. Okay, I got slapped my first day of kindergarten by the kindergarten teacher, and
oh boy.
I remember going home lunchtime, and my late father was there, and he said, "Well, how was it?" And I go, "It was all right. When can I quit?" And I wouldn't tell him I got slapped because I figured I'd get in
You
trouble.
find out anyway, right?
Uh, and he said, "You can't quit." I said, "Well, how old? When can I quit?" He said, "Well," I said, "Why can't I quit?" And he says, "Well, if you quit, I'll go to jail." "Well, I don't want you to go to jail, so I'll go. But when can I quit so you don't go to jail?" He says, "Well, you have to be 16." I go, "Well, I'll quit at 16." He says, "No, you won't." And the argument started in kindergarten,
Right.
and I did finish high school, but barely, and never got my diploma. And my parents were always on my case until the day I finished high school. But my mom especially about school, how important. And I said, I don't really like it. She knew I never liked it. And then years later, and this happened about last year sometime. I lost her in July, and she was 97. So about 6 months earlier, she said to me one day, she always called me Charlie, and she said, Charlie. Um, we were so wrong about you, and I apologize. We wanted you to be a doctor or a lawyer or accountant or a dentist. You weren't interested. You knew at 3 years old what you wanted, to drive a truck and own a trucking company. You said that at 3, and we wouldn't listen to you, and we made your life so miserable. I apologize. We should have listened to you. And, sometimes kids do know.
Yeah, we do. Something about that destiny thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. Hey, look who's joining us. Mr. Muhammad's coming on. So tell me something, Marty.
Yes.
How did this, and tell our listeners, because I don't really know the whole story. How did ATHS start? It's been around, I think, since the early 70s, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
You're exactly right, Chuck. Yeah, a group of gentlemen that were in the industry got together in 1971 and formed a society. We became incorporated in the state of Illinois. So here we are 54
54
years
years.
later. Um, one thing led to another. I mean, the society just continued to grow and grow and grow and grow. Couple different locations. Went to the south for a little while, and then decided that we needed to own our own building. So we began to look at Middle America. Ended up in Kansas City, where we're at now. The foresight of those gentlemen who put together this organization, our founders, just never ceases to amaze me. We're still working from the bylaws that were put together in 1971. Certainly, we made changes, we made amendments,
Of course.
and things like that. But their vision um, is still true today. It is still the core of what we do to preserve that history. Um, and I just marvel at those.
Wow. Talk about visionary.
Yeah, man.
So when I was there was a library called the Zoe James Library.
Right.
Who was Zoe James?
So Zoe James was the first librarian officially, okay, to work in the ATHS library. She kind of got the thing started, put it together, and put some semblance of order together with.
What year roughly would that have been? Roughly. We won't quote you.
I think that was probably late 70s, early 80s.
Okay. So it had been around 10 years, and then they really got real professional.
Yes. Yes.
Now the building that you're in Kansas, when did ATHS move to Kansas City?
We've been there about 12 years.
Okay.
It's quite the place. You know, we've got the library there. We've got all kinds of memorabilia in there. It's not a museum. That's our office, right?
Right.
And we've got a little bit of a store there and so forth. And of course, the staff all have offices there. But you know, it's you can go in, you can sit down. You're free to roam the place, roam the library. Pack a lunch, bring a sleeping bag. You'll start looking at something, and before you know it, a good amount of time is gone because this leads to this, leads to this, leads to this, and
you know, it's like looking at, you know, I think it's much healthier, but it's like looking at social media.
Yeah.
You know, and I've caught myself a couple times in the mornings having coffee when my wife has left for an appointment, and I'll sit there, have a second cup of coffee, and I'll get on Instagram, and then I look at the clock, and I've been on there for an hour, and I go, this is a waste of time. You know, like coffee's done, phone's going away. I got to make stuff happen, even though
that's why you're retired. You're your schedule.
I did not retire to look at Instagram. Okay, let's get that. I got everything. How many members does ATHS have?
So we're around 14,000.
Wow.
Our membership, like most organizations of that sort, is declining, and it's truly because of age.
Yeah.
We unfortunately lose more members a year that pass away than we can recruit.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny because you look, and I guess that's life, because there's more. This is real sad, but there are more obituaries than there are birth notices in the newspaper.
Yeah, boy.
You know?
Exactly.
So I'm hoping, and it hasn't happened yet, but it will happen. The new Canadians and the new Americans that have come here especially from Southeast Asia, they haven't. They're busy working. They're, you know, as they would say in Jersey, they're still making their bones.
Right.
They're trying to figure it out, and they've done very well in the industry. Although there's a lot of bad rap about some of them, there's bad apples in every bunch. But they are the predominant ethnic group in our industry, and I think they will probably be the next ones carrying the torch, because you know what? They're truckers, and truckers love old trucks.
Right.
You know, they may not like driving them for very long because they're not, the stuff that they got into when they came to Canada and to the United States is pretty plush compared to the old workhorses that you and I own and the ones we show. You only have to drive one, 20 miles down the road and you go, why the hell am I driving this thing?
But no, yeah, we need young people, and we're very fortunate. We've got some younger members that are part of the organization that have really stepped up. They have their own little group, our future leader group. There's several folks in there. A lot of them have come forward to chair committees, are very involved with the society and spreading the word, to their friends. I get it. I mean, you and I were in exactly the same spot. We're 40 years old. We're busting our butt trying to make a living, raise a family, and make sure everything gets done that we said we would do.
Yeah. You know what? I'll be honest. At 40 years old, I actually owned a B model, and I ended up having to sell it because I didn't have a place to keep it inside.
Really?
And because I had a business that had garages, but I wasn't about to give one of my garage spots away to my toy truck that I'd pulley offload with because it just didn't make sense. And my responsibility was to my customers and my employees, and and to my family.
Right.
And I understand, young people, and I think young people today, especially if they're in the trucking industry, it was always tough, but I don't think it's ever been tougher than it is right now.
I can't imagine, Chuck, to be very honest with you. I mean, yeah, we had our challenges. If deregulation, strikes, all of that went on in our era, but I can't imagine being out there every day, all day right now.
No, because there's no, you're hoping, like, best you can hope for, and unfortunately, in a lot of cases, the best you can hope for is to break even.
Yeah.
That's the best. This fellow that Ronnie that I met that I met at York that sold his company, 25 years before I did. Here's a guy that always worked on a 80% operating ratio, and with his company because he sold it 25 years ago, and now when he looks at these companies that are working on 1, 2, and 3% operating ratio, he shakes his head and goes, "Why would you even bother? Like, you're waiting for a better day to come. Like, this doesn't make any sense."
Right. And that's exactly what happened in deregulation that happened to us. I mean, we had very good authority. We had a lot of different irons in the fire. And one by one, our customers came to us and said, "Hey, man, you've done a fantastic job. You never break down. Your guys are always clean. They're always courteous. You do exactly what you say you're going to do, and you charge us exactly what you say you're going to charge. But there's 6 others standing in line that will do it for half. So, man, I hope I'm able to survive because when they go belly up, I'd like to come back and help y'all,
Yep.
Um, we didn't need to practice.
Yeah, I get it.
Right.
It's funny, Marty. I ran a gypsy, kind of somewhat of a gypsy operation to start with, and branched.
We all did probably.
Yeah, I luckily, and it was just, there's the big guy watching out, some guardian angel watching out. And when I got in the industry, I just happened to buy a truck that was leased on with a gypsy company. I didn't know anything. I was a dumb 21-year-old long-haired hippie, and the industry, my own family wouldn't even, my uncles and aunts and my cousins wouldn't even give me the time of day. But the trucking industry took me in as the orphan child and looked after me and watched out for me. And that's why to this day, 50 years later, I'm just so anxious to give back for that reason, because it's such a great industry.
That's really cool. And yeah, it's so true. I mean, gosh, I've had a few people through the years that have really taken me under the wing, showed me the ropes, taught me how to do it, what not to do. And I'm forever indebted to those folks, you know. And like
Yes,
you, I mean, I'm trying to give back what I can through my volunteer time with the society,
you're
and
certainly giving back, Marty. You're doing a great
well,
job there, man.
it's thank you. It's been very rewarding. Um,
How long have you been with in an executive position with ATHS?
I've been on the executive committee for 10 years,
Wow.
and one more year to go. Well, year and a half to go. Um, and then I will be a past president. Which one of the elders there says that's the best position in the society. Past president.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah,
You've done a lot of work there, man.
it's certainly not. It's not been easy. It's not been without challenges, but very
Yeah.
rewarding. And I'll tell you what, Chuck. Today at ATHS, we are in a better spot than we have been in a very long time.
Oh,
Certainly since I've been
wonderful.
a member. It is. I mean, Dr. John has just done great things. We're starting to get recognition uh, through our Hall of Fame committee and that group. Corporate America is kind of starting to take a look at us. You know, seems we've been the best kept secret for a very long time. And
100%, because
yeah,
if we don't know our history, we'll never know where we're going.
you're right. And we
And
cannot forget it.
I'm a big, big believer in history, and history is lost so frequently. Even in if you don't write it down and you don't have if you can't pass it on, and you can't just, it's very difficult to pass things on just verbally.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
Right.
I was just looking at it last weekend. We had a family function where we honored my mother and my sister. We unveiled a tombstone for my mother's grave, and I had family there for it, cousins and stuff and relatives and good friends, and we re-unveiled one for my late sister as well, because long story, but she had died. She was married, and I changed it. I changed the tombstone back to her maiden name, and just the and I realized right then how important those graveyard markers are, the tombstones, because it's the history of somebody. And when you just cremate them and you throw their ashes in a field or in a river, it's like they never lived.
Right.
But we can walk through cemeteries in North America even that are 200 years old and get a history of that person's life. We don't know everything, but we get something that they lived.
For sure.
And that's why, and of all things, we want to keep the history, I think, of the trucking industry, because it's the number one industry in Canada. Transportation is, and it's close to that in the United States. Nothing moves with a truck.
Right. You know, our president for his company has a little motto: think of something that wasn't delivered by a truck besides you, and there is nothing. Right.
Exactly. Exactly. And, trucks built this continent.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
I don't think, I'm a real believer, we do not get the recognition as an industry. Those men and women out there pounding pavement, and there are the odd ones that don't drive as well as they should. You know what? But they're not the majority.
No.
They're the far, far, far the minority. And
Yes.
they've always been out there. We've always had cowboys.
Sure.
We had idiots doing stuff 50 years ago.
Right.
This is nothing new.
No. No. It's just better publicized.
Well, yeah, we didn't have, you know what? We didn't have Instagram and
Right.
Facebook and all these things.
24-hour news and all of that. Right. God.
Exactly.
We.
And car drivers back in those days, I remember when I got into the industry, we were celebrities when we walked into a room. Yeah. Now, oh, guess what he's doing,
Right.
and people say horrible things to you. Well, your guy, they used to say, your guys run a lot of people off the road. Where the hell did that come from?
I agree.
Safety is really, really important to us. It's the foundation of our industry, just like the airlines. You can't have an airline that has crashes all the time. You can't have a trucking company that does.
Right.
It just doesn't. And I say it here all the time, and I get really upset when I see people on social media showing accidents and crashes and drivers doing stupid stuff. You've caught somebody in their worst moment of their life. I remember seeing one, a Eastern European couple up in Northern Ontario. They had smashed up a truck. And Northern Ontario is probably one of the worst places to drive in this entire continent of North America. A 2-lane road with no shoulders that goes about 500 miles. And that's where it happened. And he's making fun of them and I said, what is wrong with you, man? Like, these people, something, I'm sure they didn't mean to do this. This is
Right.
Things happen. It was unlucky. It's these people's worst moments of their life. We don't know what the repercussions are from it, and you're making fun. And I don't know if this was another driver or this was just, I have no idea, but that's the sort of stuff that gives us a bad name.
It is. And it's unfortunate. I mean, I guess I'm proud to say that I've never had an accident, but been close plenty of time, and things happen, right? I mean,
of course they do. When I was a kid, I clobbered a car. I was the famous thing, turning right, and made a wide right turn, and a guy in a Rambler decided to go beside me, and I didn't see him, and I did $300 damage to that Rambler.
Yeah. Wow.
Today would be a write-off.
Oh yeah.
That's the difference too.
True. It is. It really is.
Everything is it's a different world today, and it's hard. And that's the beauty of this organization. It brings you back to a better time.
It does. It really does. And keeping that in perspective and looking forward to see how we can apply the lessons we've learned back then to tomorrow. So maybe tomorrow is going to be a better day as well,
Well, that's what history's for. So we should learn. If we're smart.
Yes.
We're smart, okay, as a species. And sometimes I wonder because, my late mother-in-law used to say, only a donkey kicks himself there, falls in the same hole twice.
Right.
And it's true. We should learn from experience. And it's best from history, but it's best if you can learn from somebody else's bad experience. That's the best.
You bet it is. You bet it is. And I'll tell you, there's plenty of folks around that are more than willing to share do's and don'ts with you, and they're not trying to be, they're not trying to elevate themselves to another.
No, not at all.
They just want to share, and it can certainly learn by sitting around listening to those guys. My grandpa said, he told me, he said, you have 2 eyes, 2 ears, 1 mouth. He said, that's by design. You watch, you listen, you'll probably learn a thing or two.
Exactly. And these younger people that are getting into the industry, the best thing that they could do is to go to these shows and listen to the old timers, because they're going to give you the best of information there is. These guys, I've met people at these shows that have been driving a lot longer than I have, and I've been doing it. I started in '74. I've met guys that were driving in the early '60s and the '50s at the shows. These guys can tell you a thing or two about going down a mountain in the middle of the winter on ice without a jake brake, or
or
And
with a Jake,
I remember the front, you didn't have front brakes either.
right? Well, that's very true. And there's a few guys around there with 4 million miles that
Oh,
are
yeah.
free, and my gosh, that's just
Yeah.
hats off to them. That's remarkable.
So if a young person in the industry really, really wants to learn, because all these courses will teach you how to pass your driver's test
Right.
to get your CDL, but that's
Right.
all they're going to do. You
Yeah.
have to get out there and learn by trial and error. But there's not a lot of room for trial and error today. Not a lot of room for. There's a lot of room for trial, but there's no room for error.
There you go. Right. Exactly.
So
Exactly.
what you want to do really is you want to sit there, and I did that when I used to, any chance I got when I started driving, and throughout my whole career, I want to listen to the old guys
Yeah.
because they always had great advice. Little things. Here's a guy who's been doing it for 60 damn years nonstop. Yeah, I think he knows a thing or two. You've been doing it for 3 months.
Right.
You are going to learn some stuff. So, boys and girls listening to this, if you're new, if you haven't been driving for 10 years, come to one of these shows. You may think you know everything. Trust me, you don't. And there's lots of stuff out there that you will learn that will save your neck somewhere.
For sure. None of us know it all. We learn every day. We have to learn every day. When that stops happening,
That's
the
that's it.
party's over, right? Yeah.
When you stop learning, that's the end. You don't, it's full, or you think it's full, or maybe there's just no room because of other stuff that's in there, and you don't want to make any more room. And that's what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I've been very fortunate. I've had a couple people through my lifetime just take me aside and really teach me, but I wanted to learn. Um, I watched, I listened, I paid attention. Um,
Yeah,
but
there's
those folks
nothing
are
like.
more than willing to help if you will show a little bit of an interest.
Yeah, talk to, come to these shows and go to the old timers, ask them questions they want to share. Nothing makes us guys happier than talking to young people. And we'll be honest, if we don't know something, if you're asking somebody something they don't know, they'll tell you, I don't know the answer. Or
Right.
for what we were doing, we could never use recaps because of this. I had a guy on here a few weeks ago that hauls show freight, for rock and roll concerts and stuff. And there's no way they could, everything's got to be newer trucks, with non-recap tires. Because and I found recaps were fantastic.
Yeah, we
But,
did.
you have
Use
to,
it properly.
yep. But they just can't take that chance for
Right.
what they're doing. So he may say to you, you know what, I don't know a lot about recaps because I don't run them.
Right.
I can't for what we do. Same as air freight guys. They may not be able to run them because they've got to be as fast as an airplane.
Right.
So,
No,
Marty, in your trucking career, what sort of, so you owned a trucking company? Did you start it, or did your dad or grandfather?
we started it. I went to tech school to be a diesel technician
Right?
and worked in the shop for 3 or 4 years, and then decided we were going to get rich and go trucking. So my wife and I started up, and one thing led to another, and we did okay there for a while. We did really well for a while. Say deregulation hurt us a little bit. We paid good money for some authority that really wasn't worth much, and things happen, and for a reason, I guess. Um, but it was quite an experience, and I met people that I will never forget. I've done things that I never thought I could do.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, it and in places I thought I would never go. So
I can say the exact same thing, and it all has to do with because I got into the trucking industry. It's just, and it will come back at some point.
oh yeah,
We just don't know when, because it's, you know damn well, Marty, this has always been a cyclical business.
Very much, yes.
Since the day I got in it, it has been cyclical.
Yep.
And it still is, always will be. And right now we just came out of the longest upcycle we ever had. You know, like my son Doc always says because he's in the industry still, and he always says in trucking, we don't have good years, we have good weeks.
Very true, yeah.
And you know, I remember him. He would come into my office all the time back. If you remember that boom we had, how long ago did you retire?
I'm still working.
Oh, you are, okay. So you remember that boom we had, 2007, July 2017 to July 2018.
Yeah.
I remember my son kept coming into my office going, "Pap, have you ever seen anything like this in your life?" And I said, "No, it's pretty good. You know what? I have seen this during periods when the Teamsters would go on strike for a couple of weeks or something, and things would go crazy, or just before a big holiday or something. But no, not for that long a period of time." And then, if you remember, I think it was around December 2000. It went from 2017 to January 2018, and then the big bird just crashed. And then when that happened, it didn't come up again until a month after COVID. And when COVID hit, the first month, it was March, and Marty, I thought it was the end of the world. I really, everybody had my phone number. I had all of these drivers calling me left and right that had my number, going, mostly ethnic people, saying, "Do you think I should buy a truck?" And I go, "Are you crazy? Do not buy a truck." And a lot of them did. And you know what? I think had they listened to me in the end, they would have made a hell of a lot more money, because they did make great money. No two doubts about it. But whatever they made, they lost.
Yeah.
So because, they paid too much for trucks. Guys were paying, I don't know what it's like where you live, but new entrants at that point were paying $35,000 a year for insurance. Well, you can pay 35 grand a year for insurance when you're getting $5 or $7 or $10 a mile, no problem. But when it goes down to $1.50, you can't be paying 35 grand a year for insurance.
Not much room there, right? Especially with $4 a gallon fuel.
Exactly.
Yep, very, very true.
So what sort of work does your company do?
Well, actually, we did sell our trucks, and we sat down at the table one night when it was all over, said, "Where's the most of the money go?" Outside of wages and fuel, and it was an insurance company. So I got a job with an insurance company.
Oh, good for you.
But still heavily involved in the transportation district and in claims, and actually train a little bit our adjusters to handle those kind of claims. So the knowledge that I gained in the trucking business and through my technical career, it's really served me well. And been fortunate.
So, Marty, if you, I don't know if you know the answer, but have insurance companies started to make money again, or are they still losing?
The one I work for is, yes, making money.
Yeah. Okay, I'm glad to hear that, because I don't think anybody should be in business to lose money, number one. And if the insurance companies are losing money, then that means they're going to charge the trucking companies more money, which means the trucking companies can't make any money.
Right.
So it's not good for anybody.
Vicious circle there, right? That doesn't work very well for anybody.
Now, I'm just curious, is your company mandating that their customers, their insured, put cameras in the trucks?
Yeah, I'm far removed from that part of it, but as I understand it, we offer a considerable discount if you do.
Okay. Because I can't understand, and some people may be really upset with me, but from what I've learned through the years about, I've bought insurance for 40 odd years for trucks, and And I'm still buying them really from my old classics.
Right.
It's totally different. But I got to tell you, there's no way I would insure a truck without having a two-way facing camera, forward and back, because that protects the driver too.
Yes. Oh, absolutely, Chuck. I mean, it's just you drive down the highway and you see billboard after billboard after billboard of ambulance chasing.
Ooh, they have really,
Oh my God.
yeah. You know what? This is predatory.
Yes.
And then you hear the stories about what happened in New Orleans with that, but that's not the only one. That's the one they caught.
Right. Yeah.
There's lots of those scams. And when I see that, these are the hardest working people in America and in Canada. Why would you want to harm them?
Agreed. And I mean, we all have choices, right? But gosh, I missed some birthdays that I shouldn't have missed. I missed some school plays that I shouldn't have missed.
My
You know
God.
where I'm headed. And
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You know, yeah. You know what? I used to take my kids in the truck every summer, before when they were really, really young. And before they were born, I would take a motorcycle trip every year across the continent every summer. And, as soon as my son turned, the last trip I took, he wasn't 2 yet. And that was it. I thought, you know what? I can't do this. I got to spend the time with him. And then when our daughter was born, I got to spend the time with them. And I would take one or the other, or once I took both out to California in the truck. And I got to tell you, that was like running a daycare center out of a phone booth.
Yep.
But it all worked out, and I have two wonderful kids, and they still love me, even though I didn't get to spend as much time as I probably did. Marty, we're running out of time, and I want people to be able to get a hold of you and the ATHS if any of our listeners are interested. I also before we sign off, would you please do the show a favor and give us a like? We're trying to elevate our status here. And Marty, if you would just tell people how to get hold of ATHS and of you, perhaps.
You bet. The easiest way is the good old website, aths.org. We also have an app, ATHS Connect. There's all kinds of information on there. It's really handy at convention time because we just continually update with schedules and things like that. So we'd love to see anybody that would like to come to the convention. We'll try and make you feel as welcome as we can. You will be welcomed.
Yeah.
And
guys, you will never have this much fun with your pants on. I'm telling you.
Oh, I gotta love them old trucks, right?
These conventions are epic. Well, Marty, I can't thank you enough for joining us tonight. You really explained a lot of things to our listeners, and we were able. And I'd love to have you on again. Just talk about Trump. You're certainly a wonderful guest, ladies and gentlemen. You could have spent tonight with anybody, but instead you chose to spend it with us. On behalf of my co-host Rico Muhammad, who's somewhere, I think he's in the background somewhere, and myself, Chuck Snow, this has been the Rates and Lanes podcast, the Great Rates and Lanes podcast. And as Rico always says, keep it between the mustard and the mayonnaise. And as I always say, catch on the flip-flop. We'll see you same time, same place next week. God bless. Good night.
Thanks
Thanks again.
Good night.